Hey, what's going on, everybody? Dominic back with another video here for you. This one will be a little interesting. I came across this video on YouTube. It's from the channel The Diary of a CEO. And then this guy right here, he's the interviewer for the channel, and he's interviewing in this particular episode a guy named Jaspreet Singh. And Jaspreet Singh is a serial entrepreneur, an attorney, and that's all I really picked up on him. I just gave him a quick Google search. I think Jaspreet Singh actually has a channel as well. It's called the Minority Report, I believe. And so the reason I came across this video, it's the YouTube thumbnail for that video says, "Do not buy a house." And I believe this is almost like the second video with that same thumbnail from this channel. So he interviewed another guy before. Excuse me. And it's the same thing. Do not buy a house. And so here's another episode where Jaspreet Singh goes in and basically gives a few reasons on why not to buy a house and etc. So right here is where it starts. It starts at about the 17 minute mark, 17-30 minute mark in this video. So let's just jump right into it. Let's go. Let me switch screens here. All right, there we go. And actually, previously, I had some technical difficulty with the sound on this. So I'm going to try my best. I'm going to play it from my phone. Here we go.
Make a distinction here. Are you saying that in order to build wealth, people should buy a house?
No. If you want to build wealth, you have to buy assets. When people say...
Okay, so he's saying basically to build wealth, you have to buy assets. I get that, but what's your definition of wealth? Is it $1 million? Is it $2 million? Is it $5 million? Is it $20 million? Is it $1 billion? I mean, because if that was the case, why not just go and start your own business? Build your business for 20, 30 years, become an Elon Musk, become a Jeff Bezos. That's wealth. That's almost like too much wealth. Okay, so I believe that's where he's coming from. He's saying buy assets, basically something that's going to pay you over time, as opposed to liabilities. A liability is something that you're liable for, that you're paying out of pocket pretty much every month, and you're not seeing a return on it. So I think that's where his whole point of view of this is he's thinking in the entrepreneurial mindset, which is fine, but not realizing that the average person that buys homes are going to be financed. They're getting a loan for these properties. All right, here we go.
Buy a house. What does that mean to most people's eyes? It means buy my home.
Yeah.
I want to buy this nice place for me to live.
Which is what most people do when they get a bit of money. They take their salary from work and then they go and buy a house to live in, and then they pay into the mortgage, which means that they are now building an asset, right?
They're building what many people call generational wealth, which is one of the biggest lies when it comes to money. The reason why...
generational wealth, he's saying, is one of the biggest lies, in his opinion. I mean, how many people have paid off their home and they have no mortgage? They have a lot of equity. The home has probably doubled or tripled its amount in value since the day that they bought it. If you would have bought a home here in the late 90s for $100,000 here in the Las Vegas Henderson area, a decent sized house would be over $700,000, or actually over $800,000. So you would have made $700,000 in equity. And then he goes on later in the video saying, "Oh, well, there's upkeep." Yeah, there's upkeep. Of course, there's upkeep on everything. What about upgrades? Did somebody upgrade the property and continue to build its value? So a money pit. I mean, it's once you get far into your loan, once you've paid down a lot of it, the interest kind of eases up a little bit. So the fact that he's saying it's a money pit, I mean, I don't know where he's coming off with this. So let's roll.
Is because your house is actually a money pit. And that's why I want you to think of your house as a liability. But I want you to hear me clearly. I'm not saying you shouldn't buy a house. I'm not saying it's bad to buy a house. You have to
See, now he's saying it's not bad to buy a house, and then he's going to say it's good to buy a house. So, I mean, you either agree with it or you don't. I mean, also this guy's an investor too, so he buys houses. You know, he doesn't. He's not the traditional buyer where, like a family or somebody who's going to live in the home as their primary residence. So let's keep going.
Your house like a liability. This suit that I'm wearing is a liability. This watch is a liability. My shoes are liabilities. Should I not buy them? No. I gotta make sure I can afford them. So when people think about buying a house, what do they think of? They think, I'm gonna build generational wealth. I'm gonna build wealth, I'm gonna pay it off, and I'm gonna be able to have more freedom in my life because I can own.
I think a lot of times when a person buys a home, they're buying it for themselves. They're not necessarily thinking of generational wealth. I think that's something that comes, down the line. I mean, it depends on the age of the person that's buying the home, so as opposed to like a young family, they're buying the home for them, and they know the basics of it, building equity and appreciation. But I don't think anybody actually buys a home for generational wealth. Okay, I think generational wealth is something that happens the longer you keep the home. So for my example earlier, could you imagine a family or different families that were related, we'll say like maybe brother, sister, or whatever, all bought the same type of home in the same neighborhood? All those homes, they'd all be worth millions of dollars, So, I mean, that's to say that that's not a lot of money. I mean, that beats the average pension, so you're going to have a lot of that. Now, the property is going to be, your equity is going to be tied up to the house, but I mean, there's other options for that, so here we go.
This house. Let's go with the best case scenario. You buy a home for, let's call it $300,000. You pay it off. And throughout your lifetime, this $300,000 home grows in value to $1 million. And now you're going to say, Jaspreet, I've showed you this is an asset. My house tripled in value, more than tripled in value, and now I'm going to pass it down to my kids.
Yep, pretty
So
much.
now, your kid's got $1 million house, but unless they have the income to support paying for $1 million house, they might have to find some more cash. Now what do they do?
All right, so he's just assuming that whoever's receiving this house or whoever's inheriting this house is not off well financially. So he's basically saying that they probably don't have a job. It's just worst case scenario. Now he's saying that this person would need the funds to maintain $8 million house. So with property taxes, you're looking at maybe $1,000 a month for property taxes, and maybe some other maintenance, an electricity bill, maybe some HOA. Maybe you might put it up to about $1,500. Okay, so $1,500 to have a house for $1,500 a month for that same house would probably rent out for about at least $3,000 a month. Okay, now this person also owns the home, so he's paying only $1,500 a month while owning the home. Okay, so let's keep going.
Because you can't just pull cash out of this house, right? I mean, it's not an ATM unless you go to the bank. The bank will give you the cash because the bank says, oh, you have $1 million house. How about we loan you $800,000? But that's not an ATM because you have to.
Okay, so loaning you $800,000, he's almost referring to like a HELOC, home equity line of credit, to which they'll let you borrow up to about 80%. So he's shooting from all the way to the top on this one. He's saying that, like, why would you need to pull out $800,000? So you are going to pay some interest on that, but the whole point of pulling out a home equity line of credit would be to, I mean, it depends on what you're pulling it out for, but you'd imagine that if you pull it out, you want to pay it down, within a reasonable amount of time to where that equity is not going to start eating at you. Okay. So if you're pulling out $50,000 or $100,000, you're going to have to pay it back. But the whole point of, a HELOC is to pay it back in a decent amount of time. So you can actually pay down your loan balance with a HELOC and not pay any more interest on your loan. So let's keep going.
Pay that money back plus interest. And now, unless your kids have the income to pay for the property tax, to pay for the insurance,
Oh, let's catch up a little bit.
to pay for the upgrades, to pay for the maintenance and the mortgage, they can't afford the house. So maybe now they have to sell. Okay, now you sell it. You got $1 million. Good.
Okay, you said pay for the upgrades and the mortgage. I mean, I thought a little bit ago you said that the home was paid off, so there is no mortgage. Upgrades, usually people that inherit a house, they usually sell it. And I mean, there's really no point in fixing it up and selling it. I mean, if you're going to keep it, maybe, you could possibly pull out a HELOC on that and, get some upgrade on it. But for the most part, I don't know why he's referring to mortgages or mortgage payment.
We're not even going to talk about taxes right now. But you got $1 million. You're rich. But if they don't have any financial education and you have $1 million, what's going to happen? Well, let's think about this. If you had $1 million, what would you do with it? If I went down the street and I asked the average person, if I wrote you a check for $1 million today, what would you do? What are people going to say?
Okay, if he wrote you a check, if he comes up to somebody randomly on the street, that person has no risk in this situation at all. It's not like he's asking the person who owns the house if you wrote him a check. So, and he's also coming off like basically Americans are stupid. So I'd imagine the person who inherits this $1 million house would be, somewhat credit worthy and understand more or less what to do with the home. So let's go.
I'm going to go to the Bahamas. I'm going to buy myself a nice house. I'm going to buy myself a nice car, buy myself some nice clothes, go to the Gucci store, go to the Louis Vuitton store, and buy myself the extra guac at Chipotle. That's what the average person will do. Now, maybe you're a little bit more financially smart. You say, I'm just going to live off of $50,000 a year. But after 20...
Okay, so live off $50,000 a year. So basically he's saying the person that gets that house they ain't going to work. They're just going to relax, kick back, and just be on the couch the whole time, living off $50,000 a year. So, me and my personal opinion, even if I did inherit $1 million house, I would not just sit on it. I would, keep grinding in my life and act like it's not even there. Let's go.
Years, you have nothing left. Not to mention the fact that 10 years from now, that $50,000 a year lifestyle is going to buy you half of what it can today. So now let's go back to that situation. You thought you built generational wealth. You did a good thing about paying off the mortgage because you don't have to pay the mortgage payment. But is that really the type of generational wealth that you want? And now to fully hammer this home, I'm not saying it's bad to own a house. It's actually very great. It's an amazing thing to own a house free and clear.
Oh, so now it's a good thing to own a house. He's saying free and clear. Well, how are you supposed to get to that point, Jaspreet?
Because now you can rest assured, you don't have to worry about the mortgage payments. If you have the financial education, that's great. But let's talk about now the real way to do this and build true wealth. When I buy my real estate investment properties and my property values go up, the rental values also go up. The rent is what pays for the maintenance. The rent is what pays for the upgrades. The rent is what's paying for the property taxes and the insurance. The rent is putting money in my pocket. And this is cash flow that I can use. I can use this cash flow to buy a vacation. I can use this cash flow to buy food. I can use this cash flow.
So it sounds like a great investment to me. So, he's saying that if he rents it out, then, he's still going to have to pay, maintenance on it. Maybe if there's a mortgage, he might have to pay that. But at the same time, then he's talking about cash flow. So you may not cash flow. I mean, you could break even on the home. You know what I mean? So.
Paying for my lifestyle. But your house doesn't do that. You have to pay to live in your house.
But people think, they're getting their mortgage payment.
Yeah, you got to pay to live in your house, but I mean, people talk about investing in the stock market. You can't live in the stock market. What better investment is an investment you can pay every month while living in it, while it's appreciating and building equity?
They're spending whatever they are, spending on their mortgage payments. They think we're kind of told that mortgage payment is an investment into an asset.
Your mortgage payment is a payment to your bank. Banks are not stupid. In fact, they're very smart.
All right, it's a payment to your bank. I mean, how else is an American supposed to buy a home? 90%. I'd say 90% of the people that buy homes are people that need a loan. Okay. Of course, the bank's going to try to make a profit. That's the way of money. Anytime you lend money, you're going to get some type of interest back on it. Okay. So, I mean, he's saying it like it's a surprise, but fortunately, anytime you get a loan, you have to pay some type of interest on it.
Banks do something called front-loading your mortgage. What that means is if you go out and get a 30-year mortgage, which is what many people do in America, and you pay $3,000 a month on your mortgage, you're not paying $1,500 to your interest, your bank, and $1,500 to your principal, your equity. The way it works is banks front-load your mortgage, which means for the first almost 15 years, it's about 14 years and 8 months or so, but for almost 15 years of your mortgage, the first 15 years, the majority of your mortgage payment is going directly into your banker's pocket in the form of interest.
Okay, so you might be paying some interest up front, but he's referring to 15 years. After 15 years, you're going to have a lot of equity. You're going to have a lot of appreciation that if you decided to sell that house that day, after 15 years, you're putting in your pocket, I mean, at least a few $100,000 easily. I mean, of course, it depends on the price point, etc. But after 15 years, you still have a decent amount of equity.
Which means if you're paying $3,000 a month on your mortgage, for the first part of your mortgage, maybe $100 is going out of the $3,000 into your equity. The other $2,900 is going right into your banker's pocket.
I don't know about $100. That seems a little low.
With interest. And now, after 15 years, now half of your mortgage payment is going to your equity and half is going to interest. But if you refinance before that 15-year mark, that starts over. And so this is where banks understand the game. Again, I'm not against buying a house, but you gotta...
He's talking about refinancing if rates come down or something, and that's where you can get a HELOC. You could possibly take out a HELOC. If you have a $100,000 balance, for an example, you could pay down that balance and avoid the equity, or not the equity, the interest. So if you have a 7% or 6% interest rate, definitely consider a HELOC to pay down your balance and avoid paying that 7% interest.
Understand the game of money, and most people don't understand that. And so the mistake that people make is they buy a house they can't afford, and now they're paying all this money into their mortgage, thinking that I'm building wealth. They no longer have money to save. They no longer have money to invest into other real assets, and
so he's just assuming everybody's cash or house poor. So he's just assuming that everybody's got a high payment that they can't do, that they're constantly struggling with, possibly end up in pre-foreclosure. So one thing I wanted to say is, there's nothing wrong with the way he's thinking. That's the entrepreneurial mindset. There's nothing wrong with telling somebody to go start a business, change the world, become a multi-millionaire, billionaire. But at the same time, who he's talking to is the American people. The American people, they're fine with, having their job, working 80 hours every 2 weeks and getting a bi-weekly paycheck, and having the weekends off. That's the American dream for some people. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with either way, how people want to live their lives. So, here we go.
Is going to pay down their mortgage thinking that this is going to build my wealth. but you've been sold a lie.
This term opportunity cost. Most people don't know what this term opportunity cost means, but it appears to be very pertinent to what you're saying, especially when you just said this is money that you
Let me just catch up a little bit.
can't then invest in assets. Can you explain what opportunity cost is and how it's impacted if you buy a house?
Sure. If you have, let's make the numbers very simple. You want to buy a $100,000 home, and let's say the banks require a 20% down payment.
Okay. I mean, typically it's, for FHA, it's going to be 3%, and for conventional, it's going to be 5%. So 20%, I mean, there might be cases where the bank does require that, but I mean, as far as I know, that could be on multifamily, properties. So let's do a quick time check. Going on 20 minutes here. That's fine. So basically, yeah, he's going into what is opportunity costs. Is rent? Let's go to this one. Renting. Is renting throwing away money? Let me just see if I can match it up. Right there. All right, so let's pause it there. Let me find it here on the volume.
Well, when you eat at a restaurant, you're making that restaurant owner rich. When you go to a hotel, you're making the hotel owner rich. When I go and
This term opportunity cost. Most people don't know what this term opportunity cost means, but it appears to be very pertinent to what
So
you're
let's
saying.
try to catch it up
Especially
real
when you
quick
just
here.
said
Hold on.
this is
you lose the opportunity to take that $20,000 and maybe build a business. The houses flashed, and real estate prices don't always go up. Stock prices don't always go up. Businesses don't always work. Ready to go out. People say, well, if I go out and invest my money, the problem is housing prices keep going, but there's also a risk that housing prices could fall.
I think one of the biases that makes people want to buy a house is that they're
All right, so here we go. Is renting really throwing away money?
currently renting and they see that as just giving money away. So they think, listen, I could spend this money on a mortgage and I'll own this thing one day, or I could spend this same $2,000, whatever it is, on rent, and I'm never going to own this thing.
Well, I'm here in Los Angeles right now. I had to stay in a hotel. That hotel payment is paying somebody's mortgage. It's paying somebody's college tuition. It's paying for somebody's stuff. When I go to a restaurant and I eat out, I'm paying for somebody's mortgage. I'm paying for somebody's college tuition. I'm paying for somebody's bills. Because when you go out and you rent, that's what everybody says. I am making my landlord rich. Well, when you eat at a restaurant, you're making that restaurant owner rich. When you go to a hotel, you're making the hotel owner rich. When I go and buy a mug, I'm making the mug owner rich. And the reality is, yeah, it's good for you to own a house. But are you ready to own a house? Can you afford to own a house? And what do you want to own first? I rent where I live right now. I am making my landlord rich today. I also rent where my office is. I am making my office landlord very rich because my office rent is very expensive. Do you feel bad for me? I hope not. And this.
So, renting. Yeah, I mean, renting is. I'm currently renting myself, but if people have a choice to buy a home as opposed to rent, it comes down to a lot of factors. A lot of times, people who are qualified to buy should buy. So, I mean, with that being said, I mean, now he's going back and saying that, buying a house is good and you should buy a house.
Where we have to get over these money myths that many people keep selling you, that you can't build wealth if you rent where you live. You can't build wealth if you don't get a good degree. That's not the way that the system works. See, there's the traditional rules and then there's the real financial education money rules. And again, I'm not saying it's bad to own a house, but it's bad to own a house you can't afford.
How do you know if you can afford one?
Well, there's three parts to affording a house. You have to afford the down payment, you have to afford the monthly payment, and you have to afford the moving costs. I'm going to go start from the simplest one, which is...
All right, so he said down payment, moving costs, and I forget what was the other one that he said. To afford a down payment, I mean, it depends on your bracket. You can get down payment assistance if you make under a certain amount of money.
Moving costs, because many people don't factor this in. When you buy a house, you got to move in, and I'm not talking about the closing costs. You might have to hire movers, which are expensive. You might have to upgrade your furniture, which is
So he's talking about hiring movers. He doesn't understand the value of a realtor. I'll just leave it at that.
expensive. You might have to upgrade the house, which is expensive. Factor that in. Then I want to talk about your down payment. People don't like when I say this, but I don't say what I say to make friends. I say what I say to help people be better with money. If you want to afford the house, you have to have at least a 20% down payment.
Okay, let's keep going on that.
That way you actually have some equity, some skin in the game. That way you can actually afford the house.
Some equity, some skin in the game to afford it. You can afford a house by putting 3 to 5% down. I don't know where he's coming up with 20% down. I mean, yeah, the more you put down, I mean, the quicker you pay the home off. But I don't know if he's referring to lowering the monthly payment. But usually on a primary home residential, it's 3 to 5% down.
The third part is you have to afford the monthly payments. Now, every bank is going to have a different rule for you. Banks have like the 28.
The monthly payment, yeah, I agree with that. That's very important. A lot of times it just comes down to the monthly payment, whatever you can pay. Do you have a lot of debt? What's your debt to income ratio? You definitely want to have some money left over at the end of the month to where you could fit in a mortgage payment. Okay, so if you have $2,000 left over at the end of the month and your mortgage payment's $2,000, that's going to be a little tight. You want to have a little bit of wiggle room left.
Percent rule and these other rules.
Sorry, just on that last point, why do people not like it when you say that?
Because it's very hard to pay a 20% down payment. Housing is expensive. You want to buy a $500,000 house, you have to have $100,000 as a minimum for your down payment. And that's extra cash.
That's totally not true. 20% down to buy a $500,000 house? Bro, like seriously. Damn.
Great.
Now, if we talk about the monthly costs, the simple way.
And that's the thing about some of these podcasts. A lot of times when people are face to face, it's a verbal battle. You say this, I say this. I have 1 second to respond. Let's see what I come up with. And nobody's going to ever backtrack on their words and be like, you know what, 5 minutes ago, I said this, but what I should have said, but I mean, he seems like a smart guy. I'm sure he's great. I mean, he's doing well. He's a serial entrepreneur. That he's not an expert in real estate. Me as a real estate advisor here, I could definitely see that. So I'm not trying to bash him. I'm just trying to put this. They put this video out in the world. I'm trying to put this one out. So here we go.
And I like to follow it is you have to have a system for yourself. You have to know how much money you are allowed to spend, how much money you need to be investing, and how much money you have to be saving every single month. Then just factor it in. So the way I like to look at it, a simple rule of thumb is something like a 75, 15, 10 plan, which says for every dollar that you earn from here on out, 75 cents is the maximum that you can spend. 15 cents is the minimum that you invest. 10.
All right, so yeah, he's going on to different subjects now, and how to know if you can afford a house. Let's see what else is in this video. So, the paycheck to paycheck. So they're just going over different topics throughout this whole video. And so with that being said, I just wanted to address this video because I know there's a lot of people out there who are on the fence about buying a home, waiting for this, waiting for that. And it's very unfortunate because, they could possibly come across this video. This thumbnail says, "Do not buy a house." And a lot of times people are easily misled and diverted on videos like this through social media. So That's the power of social media. Somebody could be thinking one way and then they see a video and say, well, I don't know, I just saw this video on YouTube, blah, blah, blah. And so, um, you know, hearing it from me, I mean, there's still a lot of possibilities out there. People can still buy. Yes, if you're trying to buy a $500,000 house right now at the 7% interest rates, you are going to have a hefty payment of around $3,000. Okay. And that's probably minimum. So the 7% rates did price a lot of people out. Um, it seems like today you have to be making at least 150,000 to buy something that you want. So um, with that being said, here's the video. Let me know what you think about it, yay or nay on the video. Let me know what you think about what he said, or let me know what you think about what I said. Comment down below your opinion, and hope everybody is well. If you're looking to buy or sell a home here in the Las Vegas Henderson area, definitely reach out. You can email me at domtrue.realestate@gmail.com. That's domtru.realestate@gmail.com. It's getting late, so just bear with me. So hope all is well. Hope to hear from you soon. Like, comment, subscribe down below, and take care. Bye bye.